Hello, my loves. Welcome to Pain to Joy. My name is Danielle Sutty, and I am so thankful that you have chosen to spend some time with me today. Thank you from my whole heart. And before we begin, if it feels good for you, feel free to place one hand on your heart space and another on your low belly. And take a deep breath in, deep into the low belly. And take a long exhale. Exhaling all that no longer serves and perhaps never did. How is your heart today? My heart feels full and tender and hopeful and just so thankful. I felt called to record in this moment as I feel so thankful to little by little be reconnecting with people I love, sitting across a table, enjoying a meal with beautiful, beautiful souls who I'm so lucky to call my friends and family. And this evening, I enjoyed a wonderful time reconnecting with a friend, celebrating wins, sharing challenges, cheering each other on. And I'm so thankful. And we were just about to put our coats on as it was a chilly evening. It started to snow whilst we were inside. And a woman approached the table we were sitting at. We were sitting at a booth. And she came over and she said, "Hey, we used to work together." And I looked up, and I never forget faces. And I said, "Oh, yes, I remember." And I knew her name started with a letter. I didn't get the name quite right, but she also didn't remember my name, so who cares? And she said, "Oh, I was telling my husband, and those are our kids, that I used to work with you, and you're so wonderful." And she also shared that she felt terribly that I didn't get the support that I needed before I ended up not being able to work anymore, which was 9.5 years ago. And I used to be a high school language teacher predominantly. I loved it. It was the love and a joy of my life. And then she was introducing herself to my friend, and she mentioned that we would chat at the photocopier, where a lot of teacher chats happen, because sometimes that's the only time you're talking to another colleague and not your students. And she reiterated how exceptional she thought that I was and how much I did not receive supports in the last couple of years of my teaching career at a time when she and I would have connected. And she was so kind, and I did my best to gracefully receive all of the beautiful things that she was saying. And I even said to her in the moment, yeah, I kind of forgot about this, or I kind of forgot about that. But then after I got home and I was reflecting, I started thinking about how the year previous to me not being able to work anymore, when my brain kind of went kaput, I was surplused from my position, which happens sometimes at the end of a school year. There's not going to be room for you, so you're going to be sort of taken off the school roster as a teacher, and then you are going to apply for jobs somewhere else. And sometimes this happens the first week or two of September, and that can be really disheartening. And I actually forgot until tonight that had happened. I was just trying to get my life back, trying to teach more and more, trying to really just survive. And the school I was teaching at was close enough for me to drive to comfortably. I knew people there. I loved what I was teaching. And then the surplus situation happened. And then after that, what happened was, oh my goodness, I'm just recalling this now. It turned out there was no other school that needed my skill set, because my biggest skill set was that I taught Spanish and French as a second language, and no other schools needed that. And so then I ended up staying at the school that I was teaching at, and I actually had some very terrible experiences. And then luckily over time, I had some better experiences with some wonderful colleagues. But over that period of time, from the fall of 2014 to then eventually getting my feet back under me and having my own classroom in the fall of 2015, only for just under 3 months before I had some testing for the court case that left me unable to teach, unable to really function, I completely lost my mojo. I felt like when I was surplused, because I was going through a challenging time, I was trying to get to work every day, but really I was in so much pain. I was exhausted. And I think I felt like at least I have this school and this job that I love and some colleagues there that are really good friends of mine. I have that. And then when that got pulled from underneath my feet, I wasn't in a stable place mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I was in so much pain. And I really started to doubt my skills as an educator, who I was in the world. And I didn't know that I needed to grieve the loss of teaching until 2017. So there was a good chunk of time there from 2014 in the fall, 2015, 2016 until 2017, when I finally learned that I needed to grieve the loss of this love of my life of teaching and also regain my confidence. Now, I was going to an incredible Toastmasters group called Miracles that no longer exists here in Calgary, full of incredible people. I think I've mentioned these wonderful souls on past podcast episodes. And on those Tuesday nights at Toastmasters, I did slowly regain some confidence. And I also was really supported by pretty much everyone there. There was a gentleman who was so lovely, who since passed away. And he was a caretaker at an elementary school. And I loved when I worked as a high school teacher. I loved to talk to colleagues. I loved to talk to caretakers. I was often at school after school time, and caretakers would come and chat with me as they were cleaning the classroom or changing the garbage. And I made some really deep connections with those caretakers. And I felt a kinship with this gentleman because he was so lovely and so kind. And to me, that's the most important job there is at school. Without the caretaker, that school doesn't run. And so this gentleman really helped me feel good about myself again, reminded me a bit of who I was. And it took me time to feel more confident in my own skin. And tonight, when this former colleague came up to me and was singing my praises, I'm not sharing this from a place of ego. I'm sharing it because there were a good few years when I felt so terrible about myself because I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me doing this job that I loved. And then because of the testing for the court case, I could no longer do the job that I loved. And I'm still recovering now 9.5 years later, which obviously is very heartbreaking and very frustrating. And I was standing in the bathroom about to have a shower 20 minutes ago, and I thought of that scene from The Lion King where the kind of ghost of Mustafa, the Lion King, comes and says to his son Simba, "Remember who you are." And I wrote it down because I watched the clip on YouTube. "Remember who you are. You are my son, and you are the one true king." And I remember that scene being really impactful when I first saw that movie in a theater in Thunder Bay, Ontario in grade 10. I remember we clapped after that movie. But I was thinking, this woman came up to me tonight, 9.5 years. I haven't seen her in almost a decade. And what it made me think of was, especially when you're having a challenging time, especially when you forgot who you truly are, it might be a good idea to ask the people who love you who you are. To ask the people who love you who you are to them. Because when I left my class in the fall of 2015, it was the end of November, and I said to them, I'm going to have some testing. I'm sure I'll be fine. I'll see you guys next week. And I never saw them again. And that was extremely sad. And one of the things I learned from that experience was that I loved my job. I would have done anything for my students. I was sacrificing my health to teach because I had a mortgage and I thought that's what you do. And I loved what I did. And it was so much a part of who I was. Not I am Danielle, a sister, a daughter, a friend, an auntie, a cousin. So much of my identity was wrapped up in being a teacher. There was so much grief when I was no longer able to teach. Well, then who was I? And I've mentioned this before, and I know you can say in Italian, sono, like I am, sono una professoressa, but you can also say, faccio la professoressa, I do teach, rather than I am. And I really like that distinction because that was just one part of who I am. And yes, an important part of who I am and who I was, but I was wrapped up in that being almost all of who I was. And that really messed with my head. And I didn't find out until years later. I didn't know that the kids were really sad. My students were sad and missed me. I didn't know that parents said, hey, what happened to this teacher? And were hoping I would come back, asking when I would come back. I didn't find that out until years later. And I do believe that everything unfolds the way that it should. But that certainly would have helped my mojo. That certainly would have helped my confidence to know that I was missed. And I think that speaks to, just like when I was a teacher, that first month of each semester, I would call or send an email home to each parent to let them know something awesome that their child did, something good, something positive that they brought to the classroom, to their peers, just in case later in the semester something went a little sideways and I had to make a call home to let them know that so-and-so wasn't behaving well or they were having challenges and we needed to get some support. I always made an effort to do an initial positive call so that there was already a connection with the parent or guardian or whoever took care of that child. And so I mention that because we don't have to wait until someone has lost their confidence, until someone has lost their job, until someone has gone through a challenge to tell them who they are for us. We can tell people now, gosh, I love when you do this. You're so amazing at that. It doesn't cost a thing to tell someone that we love their generous heart, that we appreciate how they care for us, that we love their perspective on the world, that we see the value they bring to a given situation or how incredible of a parent they are or a friend. Let's not wait to tell people who they are. Let's tell them now. And then if something does go sideways or they're going through a struggle, and when you tell them who they are for you, you're just reminding them of something you already told them, and they will be more likely to believe it. So the invitation is, let's tell people with some loving kindness how great they are, how wonderful they are, how magnificent they are. And in the spirit of self-love and self-nurturing and self-compassion, jot down, say out loud, put a little post-it note on your mirror in your bathroom or in your bedroom or in your car or in your office or on your desk or on your computer screen. What do you love about yourself? What are some qualities that you know that you have that are so valuable and so honorable and so wonderful? Let's self-celebrate. Let's remind ourselves of who we are. And if that currently is a struggle, then you could ask someone you love, hey, I can't remember. I'm having a hard time remembering who I am. And I promise you, people who love you can make a really long list of deep and true qualities that you have, gifts that you bring to their lives, to every day. Let's create a circle of love, of reminding people who they are, reminding ourselves, and asking for confirmation, asking for a little love if we've forgotten who we are. And if we know each other personally, I would be more than happy to send you a love note reminding you of who you are. You can email me at dksutti@yahoo.ca. You can connect with me via DM on Instagram, Danielle.Sutti. I'm on Facebook, Danielle Sutti. You can listen to this podcast on YouTube now, Pain to Joy, Danielle Sutti. I'm on TikTok, Danielle Sutti. I don't think I've ever said my name that many times in a row. But I would love to remind you of who you are. May we remember to see ourselves and others through eyes of love and grace and compassion. And may you know how lovable you are, how wonderful you are, how much magnificence you bring to the world. And if you are in a space of not remembering all of the goodness of who you are, know that I am here, outstretching my arms, sending you a massive hug, so much love. You always belong. You are a gift. Act accordingly and let yourself shine until we meet again.